Welcome back to Time to Talk. My name is Nigel Christopher, and we're talking to the British Democrats. I would like to welcome Steve to the programme. Steve, thank you for coming along. There's been a lot of negativity surrounding nationalism over recent years. Why do you think that is?
Uh, Basically, three reasons. Post-World War II British nationalism got off to the wrong track. Some people had good ideas, but the main methods were, how can I put it, trying to ape the foreign models of nationalism, also sort of Nazi cultism or fascist cultism of Benito Mussolini or Hitler. That put British people off, a lot of British people. As George Orwell once said, if you tried to introduce the goose step in England, no one would join in. They would merely laugh at it. It's not for us. Uniforms and that kind of thing. The other aspect was a lot of the activities in the 70s and 80s were deliberately belligerent. They were quite violent. They did gain publicity, but it was always negative publicity. And the other downside of those belligerent activities was we attracted people who are basically mad or nihilistic and politically useless. And the other aspect, the third aspect, was obviously communists normally have this kind of attitude, which is a contempt for the masses, not listening to ordinary people's problems, just viewing them like an elite would view the mass of the ordinary people, not taking into account their opinions or their attitudes. I would say those three things got off to the wrong start. And really, the only areas where we did actually do normal politics was probably a group called the National Party in 1976, who got two people elected in Blackburn. Some of the stuff I was involved in East London, in Millwall in the early 90s, where we got Derek Beacon elected. And probably the stuff we're doing now in the British Democrats, where we're doing nationalist orientated, community based politics.
Okay, Steve. So just so we're absolutely clear, which economic policies does this country need in order to succeed?
First of all, it's a question of philosophy. A lot of people's economic policies, whatever party or whatever group they are, is based on what they want ultimately at the end of it. We want a sovereign, independent nation state. So we would go for six essentials, which would be economic nationalism, not only for our sovereignty, but also for the living standards of the British people, which should be at a high level. We would also have state control of credit. In other words, to nationalise the Bank of England. We would have selective import controls. And I emphasize selective because they would just be against countries that are producing goods that we could produce very well and put our own people in employment. Obviously, raw materials will still have to be imported, so some things will still come into the country. A certain measure of exchange controls, which were abolished by FATCA in 1979, where people make a lot of money in this country and then take the money out of the country as soon as possible, as well as avoiding any corporation tax. Other aspects would be education and training, especially for young people, not just to do a dead end job or to work merely in commerce or even industry, but looking at other aspects of our whole economy. Agriculture, for example, we want to get back to the stage where we're sort of more or less self sufficient in food, fisheries, that kind of thing. But also training young people in the up and coming industries, the pharmaceuticals, aeronautics, that kind of thing, and all aspects of technology and AI. We need to sort of get up to speed on that. Remember, we was the country that led the Industrial Revolution. And also something for the ordinary people, not completely across the board of the economy, but certainly worker participation in industry through cooperatives where possible, and also profit share. So that, in a nutshell, is the sort of basic economics of the British Democrats.
Well, let's finish off with a very current topical subject, which is Israel and Gaza. They're actually predominant in the current news media. As a nationalist, what are your views on this particular subject?
I've always believed in if it's not Britain's business, don't get involved, either with Gaza or the Ukraine. I like us to be in a strong position, a position of armed neutrality, but ultimately with our economic policies of autarky, we wouldn't be dependent on anyone or being pushed in any certain direction. We're a medium-sized power. We're certainly in the top 10 of economic powers, but really our sphere of immediate and constant interest, if you look at it on a day-to-day basis, is certain nations around us, so Ireland and Britain, the Benelux countries and the Scandinavian countries, and Norway and Iceland, and obviously the passageway of the Eastern Atlantic. We should never get involved in any foreign wars that have nothing to do with us. The job of a British Foreign Secretary is the furtherance of our interests, first and foremost. And I'll just finish this little answer with quotations from three prime ministers of the past who had great wisdom. One of them was Lord Salisbury, who believed in splendid isolation, not getting involved at all. And Lord Salisbury was quite confident that we could defend our island and our imperial interests as well. there was the short-lived Prime Minister in the early 1920s, Andrew Bonar. At the time, Britain could have got involved with another war with Turkey that Lloyd George seemed quite keen on instigating. But Andrew Bonar quite rightly said, "We cannot be the policeman of the world." I think he was the first one to actually come out with that phrase, and we didn't get involved in another war with Turkey. Lloyd George fell from power and Bonar became Prime Minister. My favourite one of all is probably from the mid 1850s, Lord Palmerston, that great man, Foreign Secretary and Prime Minister for 10 years and up until the age of 81. And he made a saying once when asked about, are you going to get involved in this situation in Europe or in this part of the world? And he said, and this is always should be remembered by nationalists, "We have no eternal allies, we have no perpetual enemies, we have permanent interests. They are the only things that are eternal."
Steve, thank you very much indeed for the interview. Very much appreciated. Wise words.
An absolute pleasure, Nigel. Thank you very much and take care.